Um, just pick up again this mitzvah, just the mitzvah arbe v'esrim v'loisaseh. Hishis hilnu min neseis Yehuda v'yichula v'yis'ale with the burden shams haptoches v'letoi v'lera sheyidu v'yichulu oisanu b'shem b'hem neviot that neviim say b'shem HaKadosh Baruch al tzad shenistapik b'hem, because the reason that he's trying to menaseh because he's mesupik. Okay. Now, the Rambam has a line here. Acha sheneda amitas nevuas hanovi sheyisape bohem, which in kapach ashehudio oiso. So the Rambam has a rider here that the problem with suffix is only after you know the amitas hanovi. Once you know the amitas hanovi, then the lav comes into being. And just want to point out, I found it amazingly interesting and tantalizing. Okay, this basically Ibn Tibbon is Shisapa Bahem and Kapach, Shiadiyah, but I looked at Ibn Eoiv, and the whole line here is not there. All he has is Hishis Hilim and Sasi Uda Vichulov, but not exactly the words that he says. Yisale, Jiyida Vichulov, Oisana Bohem, Neviov, outside of Sop, Achat Sit Stapik Bohem. This line that you need on Novi, that the lav is only a Novi Emes or Novi Muchsok, is not in Ibn Eov, and it's interesting to contemplate, but we can't do anything more than contemplate, that maybe the Rambam added this later. Now, in context of this, I want to discuss a point which I discussed last week, but from lack of my own personal research, I didn't know the full answer. And I'll try to discuss it now in a way that I think should be discussed. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm still missing something. The Rambam, let's start like this. The Rambam talks about a Novi Emes, and there's a Sugya Sanhedrin that talks about Novi Muchsak. Okay, so the question is, when do you need a Novi Muchsak? What dinim would apply at a Novi if he's not Muchsak? And what dinim apply only in a Novi Muchsak? And the Sugi in Sanhedrin that introduces this idea of Novi Muchsak is in Pei Tessamay Beis. Mevatir al Divrei Novi, that's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin, that somebody who denies the efficacy of the Novi and violates, who's mafkid developed, whether Rashi says it or the Rambam, whichever way you want to learn it. So the Gemara asks the question, how should he know in order to prevent, in other words, how do you know it's a Novi? In order that there's a problem with Vatal Divrei Novi. Maybe he's tam, a cholim chaloim and dreaming. So the Gemara says the yorev leois. In fact, the Gemara, which is interesting, ois, the Ram says you don't really need an ois. V'micha de lo yorev leois v'inish. So the Gemara says, Heicha the muchzak shiny. If he's muchzak, that he's a novi, even without a noise, there's mabatal divay novi. The Eloi Tema Hochi, Avrom, Bahar Muria, Heichi Shomale Yitzchak. So I'm not sure what that is. And I'm not getting involved. What is the dinim of Novi prior to Matan Torah? Because there's no Mavatir and there's no Elav Tishmon. We have no idea of what this is. But if he didn't know clearly that it was a Novi, he could not have presented himself as a sacrifice. I guess he's Ma'abed Asmul Das. It's an interesting Gemara, but I'm not getting involved. Whatever, the important thing for us here is the concept of Muchzak. And for Mavatal Divei Novi, for Chimis Shamayim, you need Muchzak. And then the Gemara says, Eliyahu Bahar Kamel, Heichi Samche Alei, the Avdish Bichutz. So it means the Hilas Novi that Afilu Ke'Eliyahu Bahar Kamel, that Elav Tishmon, that requires a Novi Muchzak. Elahecha the Muchzak shiny. And Ram adds a new nuance in Perek Yud of Hilchos Yisrael Torah Lochehei, that you don't require Muchzak B'dafka, but if one Novi who is a Muchzak, who you know is a Novi, gives Eidos on another Novi, that's also a Novi. But however, we don't find, so it means you need Muchzak for Lavalo Sanasu. You need Muchzak for the Chimis or Shemayim Vatal Divei Novi. And you need Muchzak for Vatal Divei Novi. And you need Muchzak for Elio, Bahar Kamel, and Loisanas. Okay? However, for Elav Tishmon, L'cheira, you only need a one-time proving, not many times. Ram says Pamachapam, and that's Muchzak. But if it's not Pamachapam, there still is a mitzvah Elav Tishmon. And you don't need Novi Muchzak or Nemon for Elav Tishmon. The Ram say that Torah, Perek Zayin Alocha Zayin, V'loi kol ha'isem ois u'moifes ma'min lo yishu Novi, Elo Odom she'ayinu yoidim boy mitchilo asoi shehu roi l'nevuah b'chochmosoi b'ma'aso shenis'ala b'hen al kol b'nei giloi v'oyem mahalech b'dalkei nevuah b'kedushosa b'rishosa v'achar kach bo v'yosa ois u'moifse v'omo shokel sholchoi mitzvah l'shmoy mimenu Shenema Elav Tishmon. The Efshiyasa Ois Moifes, the Eno Novi. Vizeo Ois, Yesh Vola Von Begoy. The Af became Mitzvah Lishmoeloi, Hoil, the Odom Godel, Bechocham, Vegoil Nevuahu, Maminin Oisai, Al Cheskosai, Shebekach Nitzavinu, Kamosh Nitzavinu Lachtoich, Esadin, Alpi Shnei Edim. Ksherim, Viav Alpi Shef Sheidu, B'sheker, hol uksherim heim, etzleinu mamidim oisa al kashuson. So, but the one time is not the pamachapam, and the lavalis, you're still allowed. I guess you have to listen to him, Elav Tishmon, but you're still allowed to menasa him. But after he's muchzak on Nemon, so then there's a lavalis nasu. And there's Mavatal Divei Novi, and there's Elav Tishmon in terms of Afilu Elio Bahar Kamel. That's what I would have said, and that's I think that l'cheira should be correct. The only problem is ETO. Yeah. Find it 1 second. Ain't on. That's no shit. Yeah. Tichim Yamud Novi min Umois. Oh God, and he says Torah against Torah, you don't listen to him. Novi Nokum Oka. Lola says Das. But it's Sabbath of the Vitel Hazir. Bechenim Sivo Bediver Rishus. Okay, Voiva al Dvor Chaimisa. Bechein Novi Shaval de Beatzma Bechule. Then he says in Aloha Gimel in Perites, Aloha Gimel, Bechein im Yoima Lono Hanovi, Shenoida Lono Shu Novi, Lavo Achas Mitzvahs, Hatomuis Batero, O Al Mitzvahs Harbe, Bein Kalas Bein Fisho, Mitzvah Shmoeloi, Bekach Lomad Chomim, Mipi Ashmua, Bechol im Yoima Hanovi, Avor al divrei Torah kelio b'hal kamel shma loy chutz me'avodazor. V'ushiyah ador lefi shokon elo v'kam. See here, this is very confused. So the Rambam in Halacha Gimel he says that you have to be muchzak in order for Hayra to be over divrei Torah. Yomul Novi shenoi delonu shehu novi lava al achas mikol mitzvahs. However, when it comes to halacha beis, when he says v'chein im sivonu b'divrei rishus kegoin l'chu lamokum ploni o al techu asu melchom hayoim o al ta'asu b'noi choyma zo, you should build this wall o al tivnohu mitzvah shmoeloi v'oiva al dvor chayim mis b'nei shamayim shnema v'hoyo ish asher lo yishma al divrei asher al dvorei asher yidaber b'shmi anochi edrosh mi'imoi. See here in Halacha Beis, he's mashing that you should equate Elof Tishmon to Mavatal Divrei Novi, the Chim Misei Shamayim. I'm not sure how he learns the Gemara. See, you get the Gemara, there's certainly a din Novi Muchzak by, that's what Ram says, Lisanas. And that the Gemara isn't quoted by, okay? And the Gemara quotes Muchzak by Eliyahu Bakamel, also the Vatal Divrei Novi. And the Ram says Vatal Divrei Novi is like Elof Tishmon. You don't need Muchzak, but you need Muchzak to violate mitzvahs. And the discussion of Leisanasu that you need Muchzak, the Gemara doesn't mention. But that's what we have. I don't know what more to say. Okay, next. So now if we recall, we mentioned last time that the pasuk says, "Lo yisnasu es Hashem Elokechem." Is the problem is to Menasa Kodesh Baruch Hu. And the Ram says that it's to Menasa Nevi'o. And we said that the Ramban says that when you Menasa Nevi'o, that's Menasa Kodesh Baruch Hu. But the Kadmoinim say that there are other things, or that the mitzvah itself is something else. And we might have mentioned at the beginning of this, but I just want to start again because to put everything in context. The Rafsadi going, let's just mention them briefly, and then I want to see the important thing, and before we can start with the Montainis, and then we'll see the Montainis in terms of what we talked about before, and then we'll see it again in terms of what we're going to talk about. The Montainis on Testament Aleph. Omalei umay aser ha'aser. Omalei aser, you should meiser b'shvil taser. In order to be rich. You should meiser in order to be rich. Give stock in order to be rich. Omalei menolocho. He asked him, how do you know such a thing? Omalei zil nasei. You know, you want to know if it's true? Give it a try it. Zil nasei, go and try it. Omalei umi shol nisriya la kodesh baruch hu. Are you allowed to test the kodesh baruch hu? Voksiv lo yisnasu es Hashem. Omalei ochi omra boshir. Chutz mizu. Except for this, Shenema, because the pasuk of you as kol amaser el beis ha'oitzal, v'yihi ter bevesei, v'yihi ter bevesei, u'b'chanuni no bezois, Oma Hashem tzvokos. The Bundesliga testimony of this. Im lo yeftach lochem es arubas hashamayim, v'yikleisi lochem brocha ad b'li dai. Okay, so before we get started, we talk about everything else. There's a lot here, but l'cheira, the Gemara is against the Rambam because according to the Rambam, the law of Lisanasu is to test a novi and test him again and again and again after he's muchzak or know that he's a novi. And here, it's a question of testing God that he says he's going to give you, he's going to take care of you. If you give stocker, and he's testing God and give you stocker I say b'shul tisas. So that's a problem, okay? So whatever we have, and the Kadmoinim will pick up on this, there's a problem of testing God, a krutal shamikra. And that's Rav Sadi Goin comes in. Rav Sadi Goin in Perek Aleph, Shar Avodas Hashem, page 12, Vashminis, the 8th mitzvah in his minyan mitzvahs, Shehama Amin, Lo Yinase Elokov, B'oimroi Ha'im Hashem Hu Bal Yecholes B'dovazeh. He shouldn't test God. Maybe he is a Bal Yecholes in this or not. He's testing God. And the question is he omnipotent or not? Ha'im Hashem Hu Bal Yecholes B'dovazeh Oiloi. On that it says, Leisanasu es Hashem Elokeichem. And the emphasis, it's not only the website guy. You find the Radak also says something like this. You'll find in the Radak in Shaftim, in Sefer Shaftim, Perek Vov, Pasuk Lametes, he quotes it in the name of Avsadigan. So it's there and there. Say that. However, in Sefer Yereim and in the Smag, there is an ashora of Loisenasu as Hashem Elokechem to Manasseh HaKodesh Baruch Hu, to test God on schar mitzvahs. And you also find it in Rabbeinu Yoina, in Sha'ar Tshuva, Rabbeinu Yoina Sha'ar Gimel, Ois Lamed. And the Ramban also, at the end of his discussion, he says that Moisef schar, he adds that Nisoyin or schar mitzvahs is b'chlal the love. So l'chayr we have a problem in the Avsadigan. The Avsadigan we'll see says that it's only to Manasseh Yechilis of HaKodesh Baruch Hu, and they talk about the other Kadmonim talk about Manasseh HaKodesh Baruch Hu on schar mitzvahs. Okay. Now comes the Radak with a new pshat, and he says that there's an ashora on Ein Seim Chal Nes. That you learn Senas Hashem Elokechem is Ein Seim Chal Nes. The Radak in Gracious Yud Beis. So why did Avram tell her Imino Achisiat? For they samach al haftochas hokel shivticho. There was a haftocha. He Omar Shema Yigo Machet v'chein pochad Yaakov Avinu ach haftochas hokel v'chein roi l'chol tzadik shal yismoch b'mochem sakona al hanes v'yishma atzmoi b'kol tachbura asher yuchal. You shouldn't be soymech the Buddhish Avtocha. That's the Buddhish's business. You should do your shtadlus. That's what he's saying. The Azeh Omar Shloimai Ashrei Odom Mefachet Tomit. Mefachet Tomit is not to rely, but to do his shtadlus. So he's learning. V'chein Omu Chazal Minayin Shein Seim Chalanes Shenema Lo Yisenasu Es Hashem Elokechem. Such a Gemara. That's what he says. That's the shot. B'chein, the Radak you find in Bereshis Mem Beis Dalet, and the Radak in Shoftim, in Sefer Shoftim, Vov Lametes. Radak in Shmuel Aleph, Perek Tesayin Posik Beis, and in Choves Halvovis, Sha'ar Dalet, Sha'ar Bitochim, Perek Dalet. V'chein ein loyali odom likones b'sakones b'haf b'bitchoinoi al gzeres habere v'yishte same moves o shisakin ba'atzmoi lilochem imo ari v'achayos o royos l'deichek o shiyashtich atzmo b'yam o b'eish v'adoyim leze mima she'ein ho'odom b'tuach b'hen v'yisakin b'nafshoy v'hizhilnu Hakosuv mizeh b'ma she'omu lo yisenasu es Hashem Elokechem. So it's mufurish the Radak, Choves Halvovis, and in Sefer Orchos Tzadikim, Sha'ar Hasimcho Tiramaskol Bitochon Arishon, HaBitochon Arishon, ve'al hamachnis atzmoi b'sakono, v'oim ani batuach b'Hashem Yizborach, olav nemar uksir mis'arbe boteach. והתורה הזהירה על זה, כמו שכוסוב לא יסנסו את השם אלוקיך. והמכנס עצמו לידי סכונו, ומיימס עצמו, אין שגודל ממי שמיימס אחרים. Says, it's suicide, I guess, is worse than Manasseh, because Manasseh Hashem, no, is worse than killing other people. And it's the Mogen Avos, in the Rashbetz, in Meseches Avos, she'afa pi she'hoyu yoidim, Shelo yare loy keri. Derech nes, hoyu maskinen loy af mipnei hoyu maskinen loy af mipnei keri. Kidei shel yisrael nes, shem loy sasu es Hashem Elokei. I assume we're talking about the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. She'im mipnei tumas sheretz v'tzinor shal ma'oretz lo yitzrichen lahaskin Kohen Gadol acher, shezehu dover she'efshel lo l'Kohen Gadol lishmo al atzmu imenu v'lo yavo lidei tumo, aval tumas keri tumas oines. V'fi zeh lo yichumachilin oisei v'o magilim es hatumo. Kamo shenizka berishon miyumo. V'leo hoyu maskinin kohen acher. Af al pi shohoyu shom nes shlo yara lo keri. L'pi shein semcha on this. And this also, in the Ochos Hadikim, this is the law of L'snas Hashem. Okay, now, let's go back again. Rav Sadi Goin said that the law is on Yichulus of HaKodesh Baruch, that the Rebbeinu is not a Kol Yoch. The Yereim, the Smag, said that it's to Menasa HaKodesh Baruch Hu on Schal Mitzvos. And here, the Gemara in Tainus seems to say like that. That's what they're based on. It says Chutz Mizu. It means you're allowed to Menasa HaKodesh Baruch Hu by tzedakah, but every other Schal Mitzvah, you're not allowed to. And that's the law of Elois Nasu. And that's the Yereim, and that's the Smag. Now, so the question is, Smag, Yereim, is in Siman Shim Samach Aleph, Tfus Yoshon, Siman Zayin, and so in the Smag, he is in Lavim Siman Dal. So the Achreinim, the Yuchim Pula, yes, on the upside you're going. And the upside you're going is not only Rav Sadi Goin says, see, in Sefer HaMitzvos, he doesn't say that it's awesome. Okay? He just talks about the Losunasu on Yicholis HaKodesh Baruch Hu. But in Emunis V'Deis, he clearly says that you're allowed to be Menasa HaKodesh Baruch Hu Aschal Mitzvahs. Not only Tzedakah. Emunis V'Deis, Emunis V'Deis, Mayim Zayin, Divya Maskil V'Achakein, Ukeshem Matzano, this is what he says. Li Omroi, Ubechanuni No B'Zois, Acha Omroi, Loisnas Hashem Elokechem. He's quoting the Gemara, that a Bechanuni No B'Zois, B'Zois. And it's and the Loisnas Hashem, Hefresh, Vuhu, Shehi Bechino, Al Shnei Ponim, Echod Mehem Yechulis Habori, Hayuchal Adova Imloi, if the British is omnipotent or not. V'zehu ha'asa, kasher omar, v'inasu el bilvovom. Hayuchal, or hayuchal, keil larich, shulchan b'midbo. V'asheni b'chinas ha'odem, in yono eitzel ha'kodesh bo. Hayesh le'etzel l'mayli yisei imloi. Does he have this mile? Acha shuhu moide, shu yochol. Al amaisa hu v'zeh muter. Kasher omag b'gidon, v'yom b'gidon Elokim, im yeshcha Moshiach b'yodi, es Yisrael, anaseno rak hapam b'giza. V'hu k'mo she'omu, omu b'chonuni no b'zois. It means he's saying we're foolish, that b'chonuni no b'zois is not an isolated phenomenon, but you can learn from this to everything. So the question is, what does it mean, chutz mizu? So here, Rabbi Yochanan comes and says, and after all this, the whole portion of what he says, that he learns chutz mizu is that a b'chununi that you can have that it's a gilui milsa that all nisoyan al schal mitzvah is mutter. It's not an isolated phenomenon. So therefore, memela, the whole lav is only a hayuchal. The Rebbeinu Shalom is about yichal. So basically, the Gemara in Tainis, whether it's saying that everything is also except for tzedakah, or all nisyonis are mutter in schal mitzvah, is depending on how you interpret the Gemara chutz mizu. But the Rambam, we have no clue of what happened with Gemara in Tainis. Okay, so that's here. That's the mitzvah of the Oisenasa. That's Hashem Elokech. Now, next mitzvah. Mitzvah number 65. Mitzvah achomesh v'shishim. He sheshilnu minatoitz ma'abed. It's very prolific. The interesting thing is that in the Arabic, in the Judeo-Arabic, there's only one verb. That, and therefore, both Ibn Eov and Ibn Tibbon say there's one thing, it's not a double verb like Ibn Tibbon. So Ibn Eov says milimchais, and Kapach says lahashmit. So you say like that. He only has one verb. It's only one verb. There's not the double thingies. It looks very interesting, but there's no source for it, at least in the Kisayad that we have. He says hinu mi ma'abed or mi hashmed or mi limchais bote avodas hokel, the house of worship of Hashem Kel Yis'aleh. The houses, bote avodas, the houses of worship of the Rebbeinu Shalom. So a priori, reading this, the conclusion should be that not only destroying the Beis HaMikdash is a problem, but there's a problem with Beis HaKnesset, Beis HaMedrash, because it's the bote avodas hakel yisala. Whether this is true here or not, we'll see. We'll talk about it. But whatever it is, in Mina Mitzvah Kotze, he clearly says it. In Loisase Samachei, so Abed Beis HaMikdash, a bet bote kinesios ubote medrashos. So l'cheira, the has been this is that the mitzvah is that what you're supposed to do to Avodah Zarah is lo sasum kein l'Hashem Elokechem. There's a psuk and go. And since the Rambam says the Chaminyan HaMitzvos in Mitzvah say Kuf Pei Hey, that he says that the mitzvah is la'abed avodah zarah uboteha. So that's a base avodah zarah is mechayev harisa or ibud or limchais or la'ashmi, whatever you want. So memela, there's lo sasum kein Hashem Elokechem. That's very simple. The only problem is that's certainly the pshat in the minyan hakotzer, but it's not. I'm not 100% convinced that the Ram over here in Bote Avodah Zorah means Beis HaKnesses. I mean, Bote Avodas Hokel Yisrael, because he says later on, he has a lashon. He says, Kagoin, he says, Ubo Azhora v'yomer l'sasan kein Hashem Elokechem v'chol mi she'ova al dover zeh Kagoin shi'aris shum dover min ha'heichel v'amizbeach v'adoim lehem. So what's Heichel Mizbeach and Doimelahen? Beis HaKnesses is also, so it's a little bit odd that he says that, but the truth is the Lashon Bote Avodas Hokel Yisala is clearly mashma that the Beis HaKnesses, that he clearly says it in the Minyan HaKotzer. So I just presenting the issues. You can include whatever you like, but it's irrelevant because the Ram does say it at some point. Whether it's here or Minyan HaKotzer, okay, say it. Now, next step. The question is, why would you assume that the Isa applies to Beis HaKnesses or Beis Medrash? What's the rationale or what's the postulate that it's based on? So my Rebbe, he said that you see from this lav, there's a lav l'sasim kein Hashem Elokechem by Beis Medrash and Beis HaKnesses, so it's the Charayidach that the kedusha of Beis Medrash and Beis HaKnesses is the Reis. And the same, and the assumption is, I assume, that the Isa of Loisasun in Beis HaMikdash is because of the kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash. So similarly, the Isa of destruction of Beis HaKnesses and Beis HaMedrash is because of Kedusha Shabbat. The Rambam, and there certainly is a Kedushas Beis HaKnesses. It's not clear in the Rambam it's the Raisa. The Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah, Perik Yud Aleph, Halacha Yud Aleph, Bote Knesiyos uBote Midrashos shechovu b'kedushasen hein oimdos shenema v'ashimoisi es mikdashechem af al pi shein shoybim min b'kedushasen hein oimdin. And it's more than that they have the kedusha, but the kedusha is me'ain Beis HaMikdash, because this pasuk v'ashimoisi es mikdashechem af al pi shein shoybim b'kedushasen hein oimdin was said in Beis HaMikdash. And l'cheira, he's learning that the Gemara Megillah on Chav Tesem and Aleph, v'hei lohem, l'mikdash ma'at, Omer Reb Yitzchak, elu bote kenisiyos ubote midrash sheba bavo. So that they have kilu kedusha Beis HaMikdash. But you could have said that it's Beis HaMikdash in Bavel, Beis HaKnesses in Bavel, because that was the Mokum of the Golus and the Shechina was there, whatever. But the Ram learns that it's not a din miyuchad in Bot Knesset of Bavel, but applies in general. and this that has the kedusha, and it's like a base of mikdash. We don't know that this is the source of loisasun, but this could support what Rebbe said. The Ran in Megillah Chesam and Aleph and Dap Yarif clearly says that he says lefikuch niuli the Beis HaKnesses the Kavose even she'ikroi osu loima boy dovish b'kedusha hitilu boy hachomim kedusha midivreim. It's only the Rabbot. I'm not clear that you have to go as far as my Rebbe said to explain the lavole sasu. You could say that the Isser is because Beis HaKnesses is miyuchad la'avodas Hashem, but they avodas hakel yisrael, and that in itself, independent of kedusha, is prohibits us, enjoins us from destroying the place. And you don't need avodas hakaponos, but avodas tefillah or Talmud Torah is enough. And it doesn't depend upon kedusha. And you could have said that's the Rambam in Protei Mitzvahs in Hilchos Yisodei Torah. We mentions the Mishnah, this mitzvah at the beginning of Hilchos Yisodei Torah. He says like this: Shola'abed dvorim shenikra shmo aleim, that the Shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu was called on it. So a base Knesses and a base of Medrash, the Shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu was called on it, independent of whether it has kedusha or doesn't have kedusha. And the Ramban in Dvorim, Perek Yud Beis, Posek Dalet, V'im kein yeh pirush hakosu, v'nitatztem es mizbechosom, v'bartem es shmo men hamokum hahu, lo yisasel kein l'Hashem Elokeichem, lintoitz es mizbecho la'abed es shmoi, avol tnu komad l'shmo l'mizbechoi. Not the kedusha. You have to mechabed HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is a place, this is something which yuchat HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's the lav. Similarly, it could be Beis HaKnesses also. And then it could be nothing to do with kedusha. However, it is clear that the Beis HaKnesses meyuchot for tefillah has kedusha. We don't know if it's a derais or drabonon, what it comes. This, from the Ram in Hilchos Tefillah, that the Ram says, Perek Yud Aleph, Halach Chaf Aleph, that l'choy v'shel ir v'chatzeros shemiskabzim b'mitfilah, since they're not miyuchad for tefillah, they don't have kedusha. So it is true that which is miyuchad has kedusha. We don't know if that kedusha is the rabbanon and the raisa. We don't know if that kedusha is the important factor in whether there's an isa of destruction or not. That's the information we have. Okay. Now, let's go on. The interesting thing here is that even though it's very clear in the Minyan Mitzvah Kotzer, you can have polemics about whether it's true in Minyan Mitzvahs, but in Mishnah Torah, there's no mention of a lav to destroy the Beis HaKnesses. In Hilchos Yisodei Torah, Perek Vov Halacha Zayin, Asisa filu even achas, derech hashchosa, min hamizbeach, or min hahechel, or mishar azor loike, shenema vodizora, ki es mizbechoisem titoitzum, v'kosuv loisasem kein Lashem Elokech. So the mashmos is that the Isa is on the Azor Bedafka. And it's not even clear how Abayis. And Kol Shekain, certainly, based on Knesset or based on Medrash. And maybe the Pshat is, you need Dumi the Mizbeach, because it says, Nitatzim es Mizbachaisom, V'loisasim Kein Lashem Elokechem. You need a Mokom Makovis Karbonis. And that's Azor is Mechayeves. It's only in Halisis Azor, Mokom Makovis Karbonis. And not Harabayis, and not basic Knesses. Okay. So let's continue. So we have he, she is Hilnu. I mean, the Toitz or Ma'abed, whatever, Beipote Avodis Akel Yisala. And then the second thing he mentions is Uma'abed Sifre Hanavur. And this is clearly in the Minyan HaKotzer, Minat Kotzer. He says, Shelo Abed Avod Beis Medrash, Beis HaMikdosh, O bot the Knisa, bot the Midrashos, V'chein ein mochkim HaShemois, HaMukdoshin, V'ein Ma'abdin es Kisvei HaKodesh. And that's what it is. Ma'abed Sifrei Nevuah. That's what it is here. Now, the question is, how does Sifrei Avodah Zorah, what kesher? Why should it be the? I mean, Sifrei Nevuah. Do we know Sifrei Avodah Zorah? The mitzvah is to ma'abed Avodah Zorah ubotel. So maybe Misham Shel. We don't know about Sifrei Avodah Zorah, but Mishnah Torah in Perek Zayin Aloch Aleph, the mitzvah ibud is kol anasa b'shvilo. So maybe Sifrei Avodah Zorah anasa b'shvilo. Because you can imagine that the mitzvah ibud might make Sifrei Avodah Zorah. So if the mitzvah ibud is on Sifrei Avodah Zorah, then you can imagine that there's a lav from the Abed Sifrei Nevuah. But the problem is, it's not congruous, because in Mishnah Torah we says anase b'shvilo, that's mitzvah avodah zorah. You will see that Sifrei Nevuah is only the abonin, and in Sefer Mitzvos we says the mitzvah ibud is an avodah zorah botel. He doesn't say. He clearly says that the mitzvah of the lav of ibud applies to Sifrei Nevuah. We don't know how, why. L'chera, if the Rambam says that he says Sifrei Nevuah, and he also says Mulimchait, Shemas and Nichbodim, so the lav of Sifrei Nevuah is not because of Shemos. Okay? So it means after Sifrei Nevuah, is a separate of the rice, independent of the shemus. So the fact we know in the Gemara that there's a problem of ibud mezuzah, so you have no clue, it's not clear that it's because it's of the mezuzah or it's because of the shem. That's a sugya, and it's very clear that shlal shemayim there's a the Gemara Sanhedrin 9 aleph from an aleph and a kuf yud gimel of an aleph. But it's interesting, the same way the Ram seems to be vacillating by this issue of Beis HaKnesses between his various svarim in the Minyan HaKotzer and Mishnah Torah, he has the same issue about Sifrei Nevuah. And in the Minyan HaKotzer, both are there, and in Mishnah Torah, both are the Rabbanan. Okay, now the Ram is very clear in Mishnah Torah, in Perek Vav Alochaches, Kisvei HaKodesh Kulon, Upirushein, Ubiorein, whatever that is. Also the Sofom La'abdom Biad, V'Ma'abdom Biad Makin Oisei Makis Malbus. So Ram is only the Rabbanon. It's not the Lav, and there's no Malchus. So, l'cheira, again, the Rambam in Mishnah Torah, there's no Malchus in Ibud Beis HaKnesses and Beis HaMedrash and Sifrei Nevuah, and just the opposite of what he says in Minyan HaKotzer. And here he has certainly one and probably both. Here he has Sifrei Nevuah and Bote Hokel, Bote Avodas Hokel Yisala. Now here, things become interesting because the Ram says, "Acha shekodam shom." Yeah, let's just read it. Lashon ashara umilim chayk hashemos hanichbodim ba'adoim lezeh means shemus shem nechokim. Lashon ashara sheboa bezeh for inyan hu amrei leisasim kein Hashem Elokech. Acha shekodam shom atzivui la'abed avodah zarah b'limchos es shmam ulahares voteho umizbecheseho ku. So that which is a mitzvah from Ibn Avodah Zorah is you're supposed to do the opposite by the Rebbeinu. So I think an amazing thing happened over here. Again, he says, "Omer loisas and kein Hashem Elokechem acher shekodem shomatzivui la'abed avodah zarah b'limchos eshmo." Or that is a mitzvah. In the mitzvah Zorah, you have to ma'abed the Shem avodah zarah. Did you ever see that if a Shem avodah zarah is written somewhere on a wall, on a piece of paper, is a mitzvah to burn the piece of paper? I don't know if we have a source, but that's what he seems to say over here. This is mamish. But the Rambam in the mitzvah say of Ibn Avodah Zarah doesn't mention the mitzvah of destroying the Shem Avodah Zarah. Vibartem Eshmom. What's Vibartem Eshmom? Is the mitzvah Ridifas Avodah Zarah to Ibud min Eretz Yisrael. Ad shelo yizoch Hashem Avodah Zarah be'Eretz Yisrael. This is what he writes in the end of Mitzvah Kuf Pei Hey, Mitzvah Say. V'omu shom v'bartem eshmo min hamokom ha'ahu be'Eretz Yisrael ato mitzuva lirdef achareihem v'ein ato mitzuva lirdef achareihem b'chutz la'aretz. And you find it also in Perek Zayin of Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Halacha Aleph. There is in the Gemara an Indian of Ibud Shem Avodah Zarah, but it's not physically to destroy the Shem. It's really something else. It's the Machana the Shem Ganai. It's in Avodah Zarah in the Gemara Avodah Zarah Memvavam and Aleph. It goes like this. Abe tabdun im kain matam olemi vartem eshmom and amokom ha'u lechanes lo Shem yochol l'shevach sagodaitach elo yochol lo l'shevach l'gnai tam olemi shaketz tishatzenu v'sayev tzvenu k'chemu o ketzad o yekoyin oisei beis galia koyin oisei beis karia ein kol ein keitz. But this is nothing. This is not the mitzvah of Ibn Avodah Zarah. You have to be ma'abed Hashem b'mitzias, and the Rambam doesn't ask in this din also. So the question is, what's the Rambam talking about? So it is true anyway, and the question is, maybe that you can learn it from that. The Gemara in Makis on Chav Beis and Aleph says the following when it talks about cases of Malchus: "V'lech shav nami amoichik es Hashem b'halichosei v'azarosem mehocha v'bartem es shmom loisasim kein l'Hashem Elokichem." And the Gemara in Shabbos in Kuf Chafam Beis, where there's an Isa of Ibud Shem, but B'yadayim it's only B'yadayim and not their Gomer by a person going to mikvah and has a Shem Kosev B'Sarah. So it's foolish in Chazal. So what you can learn from Chazal that they say there's Malchus. So the question is, where did it come from? So we have to understand this. Amir Hashem, I think we just stop here. Oh, let's stop here. Mr. Hashem will pick up next week. Next week, because of one of the Chaverim, the Chabura, is making a chasana, so the Shiur will be a Mitzvah Hashem Sunday next week at 8:00. And for those who can't make it, the recording will be available a Mitzvah Hashem by Monday.